Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And today is another one of those programs that I absolutely love. It's something that I really don't have a lot of knowledge about. And you'll find out why here in just a second. But please join me in welcoming Mihalich Levin to our program today. Welcome, Lori.
Hi, Deb. It's really good to be here with you. Thanks so much for having me on.
Great. We're going to have so much fun today. And I'm sure that we're all going to learn a lot. So this is always very cool. So let me tell people just a little bit about you, and then we will dive into this. So Lori Mihalich Levin, JD, which means she's a lawyer, believes in inspiring and empowering working parents. She is the founder and CEO of Mindful Return, the author of Back to Work After Baby, How to Plan and Navigate a Mindful Return from Maternity Leave. And she is the co-host of Parents at Work podcast. She is mama to two wonderful redhead boys. Gotta love those redheads. And they are 8 and 10, and is a healthcare lawyer in private practice. Her thought leadership has been featured in publications including Forbes, Fortune, The Washington Post, New York Times Parenting, Thrive Global, and the Huffington Post. So again, Lori, welcome.
It's so good to be here. Thanks, Deb.
I love it. I love it. Well, as I said at the start, this is something that I don't know anything about because I'm not a parent. So I never had to deal with the fact that, I go out on maternity leave and come back. And, we are going to focus on maternity leave. But yes, fathers, this applies to you too. But, clearly it applies far more to women. But tell us a little bit about how it is that you got to where you are today and how you discovered that this really is your passion in life.
Absolutely, Deb. And I like that you referred to fathers as well. I do a lot of work to try to degender the lens of caregiving. So I would love to talk about it through the perspective of parental leave and encourage both moms and dads to take the time that they can with their children. But how I got to where I am right now in my professional journey is probably best described as sheer desperation. I was a lawyer. I was in private practice. I worked at a large firm. And then I worked in-house and did some policy work. And while I was working in-house, I had my 2 babies. And I returned to work after having baby number 1 and found it challenging. And then I returned to work after baby number 2 years later. And my husband and I like to joke that 1 + 1 felt like 85. Things were falling apart. The wheels were
You'd
coming
assume
off.
the first baby would be the worst, but it seems to escalate.
Yes, things multiplied. And I looked around for resources that could help me with the transition that I was going through, both the personal and the professional identity transition, because I wasn't the same person I was when I went out on leave.
Right.
And all I could find was snarky advice, like, oh, you might leak on your shirt if you're pumping, or don't put a photo of your baby on your desk. And I found all of that ridiculously unhelpful.
And probably written by somebody like me who's not a parent.
Perhaps, or I don't know where it came from, but it wasn't helpful to me. And so I ended up taking an online course called the Abundant Mama Project, which was populated by women all over the globe who were trying to find the abundance in life instead of the overwhelm. They weren't all working parents transitioning back to work, but I found a lot of solace in connecting with a group of other people who were all trying to fight the Cheerios under the table and trying to get out the door in the morning, all that sort of stuff. And I said to my husband, who is a career coach and an entrepreneur, somebody should create a course for new parents on how to go back in a way that's calmer and more empowering. And my dear beloved husband said, well, what are you going to do about this?
Yes. So
suddenly this risk-averse lawyer who never, ever saw myself as someone who would be starting her own company sat down with shaking hands on my bed and the laptop. And I'm like, I'm going to write a blog post. Oh my gosh. And then that terror of publishing it and having 3 people read it, and then sort of fast forward
Mm-hmm.
I've been working on mindful return and in mindful return for the past 7 years. I transitioned from working full-time with this being my passion project at night to a role at a law firm where I was a partner, but on a 60% schedule. And I was working on mindful return in the other 40% of my day. And then I shifted down to 50% at the firm and 50% mindful return. And just this past summer, I left firm world entirely.
Wow.
I am now mostly doing mindful return, although I started my own law firm, so I can still continue to serve some clients. We currently support 84 different employers in helping their employees transition back to work after parental leave, because it is a huge retention issue for employers.
Oh, definitely.
And I mean, that's the sort of chronological story of how I got to sitting here with you today, being mostly focused on my own company.
You know, and that's great, because that's how a lot of people, especially women, you know, we did this thing and then we went, oh, we really love this. And, you know, and then we ended up starting our own companies, you know, and founding our own businesses, because, you know, it seems like we go more with our passions, you know, and so I love hearing the stories. You know, you mentioned that this was really just out of desperation that you started this. And so, you know, talk about, you know, you kind of talked a little bit about the fact that, you know, with first baby, it was, but with second baby, for some reason, it was just incredibly difficult. So talk to us a little bit more about that. And especially, you know, everybody's job is demanding when you go back, but a legal career, you know, being an attorney is, you know, you can't say, sorry, judge, I can't be there today. You know, and, you know, or you can't say, gee, we're going to have to postpone the deposition, all those things. So talk about how that really was a struggle for you.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, I use that 1 + 1 = 85 thing a lot, because when you look at the data on the leaky leadership pipeline, which is really why I founded Mindful Return, because I was so frustrated that women weren't getting to the leadership positions because we were falling out at some point. You find that a lot of women end up leaving the workforce whenever they have their first child, but there is something called second child syndrome, where you actually have more people leaving after baby number 2. And there is sort of a multiplying effect of the number of logistics that need to be handled whenever a second baby arrives. In our house, it was all compounded by a massive lack of sleep. I mean, you think you're not sleeping with one, and then you've got number 2, who's a toddler who might be potty training and up and whatever. And just the need to navigate so many more logistics. Yes, they come more naturally to you because you've been through it with one child, but, you know, drop off and pick up at a childcare, or maybe at 2 different schools if one of them is older. It just sort of like multiplies exponentially, at least it did for me, the number of logistical issues that need to be handled and the level of fatigue that happens. Also, in the United States, you may know that we don't have paid parental leave. Yeah, that's a big issue right now. Hopefully we'll walk away from the Build Back Better Act with 4 weeks of paid leave, but right now we have 0. And I found for myself that I had bankrupted myself of any vacation time by taking it for the parental leave with my first child and then using it for, you know, all the sick days, because kids end up in daycares with germs and all sorts of things.
Yeah, those cootie factories.
Yes. And then baby number 2 arrived for me 2 years later, and I was out of sick days. I was out of vacation days. I was out of leave days. And you just don't have a chance to sort of find a way to restore and renew yourself because you're bankrupt on that. So I think that there are some policy issues there.
Right. You know, and I mean, that is one of the weird things. I'll be honest. I thought that it was, you know, that it was guaranteed that you got a certain period of time. And, you know, and then I realized now there are some states, and then of course companies have, you know, the ability to do it. And I love the ones that give both mother and father time off. You know, I think those are great. But, you know, of course, then the tricky thing comes in, the fact that, you know, the other employees are, wow, Lori just got a 6-week vacation. You know, back to, you know, those of us who haven't had kids, and you're like, oh, no. It was not a vacation. And, in many cases, people are still checking in from home. And we're not going to talk about COVID for a little bit. This is, pre-COVID, where people still are checking in at work. It's not that they're saying, hey, I'm not going to do anything at all during the time I'm home. And so they're just really adding, lots of things to their workload.
Well, we have to be careful in that category, because for some folks who are, for example, on disability, in certain companies, they're not permitted to be connected to their
right. Because it messes up the disability. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I do think it's a very personal decision for people whether to completely disconnect while they are out with their baby, which I think they should be absolutely entitled to do, or if they feel like touching base is going to help them stay more connected to the team and be able to jump in more easily whenever they come back. I am all for setting very clear expectations between employer and employee about what that communication pattern is going to look like during leave, because it's not the same for everyone. But and yes, to your point, it is absolutely not a vacation in any form, stretch of the word. I mean, try keeping a completely helpless human being alive around the clock for, I was breastfeeding my son, for example, and he ate 13 times a day, Deb, for the first 13. That was my job, right? And even new moms often walk into maternity leave going, I got this list of 20 things I'm going to get done while I'm at home. Yeah, I guess.
The first baby, that's funny. They always have all these, they're organized. And I love it. You talked about that in your book. You had it all organized. You had it all planned out then.
No, it all goes awry. And so, I really encourage people at offices to consider when they're thinking about someone going on leave. First of all, one, it's not a vacation. It's a microaggression to call it that.
Yeah, and it's not a microaggression. It's more than that.
Yes. And two, remember that we are all human. We are all going to need to go on leave at some point to take care of someone or something. And so please view this just as any, your uncle might have a heart attack and you need to go take care of him. Your spouse might have a health issue at some point. And, to the extent we can view leave taking with that sort of reciprocal compassion, I think it elevates the conversation within an employer.
Right. Yeah. And so, not to get political with all of this, it should be more family leave, so that if it's the uncle, if it's the spouse, if it's the baby, you're not using up your vacation time. Because as you mentioned, one of the big things is it is a retention issue. If you're, say you are the caregiver of whoever, I mean, if you feel that you can't take the time off, but you need to take the time off, then you're going to quit your job.
And we're in a huge period of massive turnover and everybody's leaving. And I want to just brag on Mindful Return for a moment. So that the average number of women who return to work after having a baby in the United States is 64%. 64% go back, and basically a third do not go back after having a baby. But Mindful Return tries to, we try to insert a program in this narrative to help change that. And we studied 1,000 people who had been through the Mindful Return course at the beginning of last year to find out what the retention rates for those 1,000 people who had been through the program over a 5-year period. And of those 1,000 people, 85% were still with their same employer and 93% were still in the workforce. So we know that offering support to your employee to say, hey, you're a brilliant employee. We care about you. We want you to come back after you have this baby, and we're going to help you have a tool to be able to do that, really makes a difference. It helps the employee feel supported. They feel like they have a community they can connect with. So, this isn't some soft skill, like help the parent out and make them feel comfy. It's like retain your kick-ass employees, if I'm allowed to say that on here, because they contribute.
That's one of the words you can say.
Okay. They contribute a lot to your organization. You want to keep them around. And right now it's really hard to find talent. So here's one way you can help to do that.
Right. This, I love the stats. I mean, those are so interesting because, of course, whether it's the male or female, and they're choosing to go back, sometimes there is the difference between they want to go back and they need to go back. Sometimes they have to have that income. They might need to have those benefits. I mean, there is that hardcore doesn't matter. I have to go back. I have to have that paycheck. And then, as a combination of that or completely by itself is I need to do it personally. I find the work, and so, combining all of that is just very tricky. And as you said, it's completely individual. It doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter industry, company, whatever. Each person is totally different.
Yeah. And I want to point out that, if you're an employer relying on the idea that, my employee has to come back because, they need it financially, they don't have to come back to you.
Right.
They can come back to another role. So if you are more, supportive and encouraging of their endeavor, they're more likely to stay with you. And there's some research that shows that working parents who feel supported through their parental leave are some of the most loyal employees on the face of the earth. They will stick with you for the long haul if you support them through this major life transition.
Right. And one of the things that you point out in your book is the fact that, and let's plug the book again, Back to Work After Baby.
There it is.
How to plan and navigate a mindful return. And mindful is the important part of that from maternity leave. And so, it is one of those things where, it varies from person to person. And I just lost my train of thought as to where I was going on that. But, it's, I know what it was. In your book, you talk about the fact that mothers are going to be one of your best employees. Doesn't matter, at what level, but they're so good at multitasking. And that's frequently what you need. And especially more at a managerial level, and because they're running the household, they're running they're doing their job. They might be volunteering, all of these other things. And so they are able to kind of, as best they can, keep all of those plates spinning.
Yeah, I think two things I want to say. One is, I think parenthood is an amazing training ground for leadership.
Oh, yeah.
We gain so many skills through parenthood, from prioritization to being able to meet the needs of demanding clients who can't articulate their needs very clearly. Exactly what you were saying. And I don't think that society writ large gives enough airtime to the positive qualities, leadership qualities that parents bring to the workplace. We're sort of automatically viewed as a detriment rather than an asset. The other thing that I want to say is that I have evolved my thinking around the word multitasking a bit, probably since I wrote the book. And it turns out that the human brain actually can't multitask on to tasks that require cognition at the same time.
Your brain doesn't switch quite that easily.
Right. Although moms are incredibly good at multitasking things like unloading the dishwasher or folding laundry while also, being on a call and whatnot, which are things that the human body can multitask. So when people say, parents are such great multitaskers, I caution people that if we're constantly switching back and forth between cognitive tasks, we're actually losing time. So we need to, focus on doing one project at a time for as long as possible if it requires our brain's use. But I do want to shout from the rooftops the idea that parenthood is leadership training that nobody had to pay for.
Right.
I mean, parents have to pay, but your employer doesn't have to pay, and yet you're getting all these amazing skills.
Right. And a lot of times parents are also doing other things that are helping them gain more. They might be volunteering with PTA. All of these various other kind of job skills that people a lot of times don't even consider a job skill.
Yeah. Deb, there's also amazing new neuroscience. There's a woman named Dr. Feldman, who's a neuroscientist at Yale, and she has discovered that the year after the birth of one's child, if you're actively engaged in caregiving, whether you're the mom or the dad or a grandma, is the year in the adult human experience when your brain is the most neuroplastic. So you have like the most opportunity for brain explosion during that year after your baby arrives on the scene. And so it's not just, we think we're getting these new skills, but our brains are actually being rewired differently, which I find fascinating.
I wonder if it is, and obviously more in women, but a hormone thing that kind of helps with all that. I mean, who knows? Yeah,
I think it's about the caregiving and the attentiveness and responsiveness to needs, and requiring some creativity in solving problems that you never had to solve before. I mean,
and empathy and all of those things that, and it's funny, when I think about the people who are the best mentors, the best managers, in many cases, it is a parent, a person who is a parent, because they do have those other skills that they're able to bring in.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was thinking about, how employers and just kind of the world in general, we've kind of alluded to it, does think about it differently, men versus women. And I was thinking, I'm a huge college football fan. I don't know if you are, but
I'm sorry then, because
yeah.
I know Georgia. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I've only lived here 9 years, so I'm like, whatever. It was sad, but they're not my team. But the other team is actually who I'm going to talk about. So several weeks ago, Nick Saban, coach at Alabama, was doing one of his Zoom press conferences, and anybody who is kind of even if you're not a sports fan, a lot of people know Saban is pretty cut and dried, pretty, this is what we do, and he doesn't tolerate things that are distracting. And so in the middle of this Zoom, and I mean, this thing went viral just because it was so anti-Saban, but it was so funny. One of the reporters, they flip to the reporter on Zoom and start to ask their question, and they've got the baby sitting there. And Saban actually stopped and said, "Who is this? What are you doing?" And he just got the biggest kick out of this in the world. But it was a male reporter. And, and I wondered at the time, and I still do, everybody thought, oh, isn't this cute? Dad's taking care of the baby. And Saban really did think it was funny. I mean, the guy started to apologize, and he said, no. Don't ever apologize for taking care of your family and things like that. So it was kind of a sweet moment from Saban. But at the same point, I thought, if that had been a female, people would have thought, well, that's not very professional. And I mean, it shows the difference. And maybe I'm kind of an anomaly, but I think that is, kind of a more universal type of view.
You are not an anomaly. There is a lot of data, cite to Bridget Schulte's book called Overwhelmed, Work, Love, and Play When No One Has the Time, for data on the motherhood penalty versus the fatherhood bonus. Whenever someone learns that the person is a mother and they're submitting a resume, for example, they are infinitely less likely to get called back for a callback or for an initial interview. Meanwhile, a man who has a child is assumed to be a dedicated employee who needs to provide for his family, and that dads get, accolades for taking their children to the park or the grocery store is definitely an aggravating fact in our society.
Yeah. I mean, when Nick Saban goes, "Hey, wasn't this cool?" It's like, yeah, it was. And I mean, and that really is kind of the sad thing, is the fact that, yeah, we did. Yeah. And everybody really did look at that and go, "Oh, isn't that sweet?" But we wouldn't have done that with a woman. We really would have gone, couldn't she have put the baby down? Couldn't, in another room? Couldn't she have done this? Couldn't she have done that? And, but yeah, with the guy, we went, "Oh, that's sweet. Look."
So let's change the narrative and have it be a beautiful thing, no matter who's holding the baby.
Yeah. Isn't that great that they're able to do that? And it was, I mean, it should be that, because, I mean, we all know, but we sometimes need to be hit over the head with it. Raising our children and taking care of family should be the top priority. It should be, no matter what else we're doing, taking care of your family should be the priority. And it shouldn't matter what sex someone is.
Absolutely. Amen. Let's de-gender caregiving, de-gender parental leave. Yes.
Yeah. And so, but that does kind of make me think now about COVID and how things have changed. Whether they're going to stay changed, of course, will be the tricky thing. But the whole thing with, first of all, we had so many women who initially had to leave the workforce. And they were back to working. They were doing all these things. Didn't matter, if their kids were 6 months old, 16 years old, they'd gone back to work. Well, then COVID hits and all these little kids come home. And so it was so, in many cases, maybe most, certainly not all, but in, the women had to quit their job and go home and take care of the kids. And that's kind of one of those weird things of the world. But now, having to transition back is going to be a little bit difficult. But at the same point, I think we're also seeing one of the benefits of COVID with all of the work from home opportunities. So let's talk about that. What have you seen on some of those?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'll say that I was home with 2 elementary schoolers.
Oh, goody.
15 straight months, Deb. 15, count them. It was then 4th grader.
And they're redheads. So,
I mean, we got the family trampoline in the backyard because we needed a place to have these boys get their energy out. And
there's only so many walks you can go on.
and how we live pretty close to Rock Creek Park in Washington, D.C. And we had a tradition for a while of getting up every morning, packing our breakfast in some bags, getting in our minivan, going to Rock Creek Park, eating breakfast in the minivan, and then requiring our children to take a hike or a scooter ride before the day began, because otherwise we were all going to kill each other. We eventually became sick of Rock Creek Park, but
there's only so many times you can look at the same tree, right?
Exactly. We needed a hiatus from it. But as you point out, the pandemic was an unqualified, unmitigated disaster for so many parents. And I say was, but I feel weird saying was because we're still in it.
Yeah,
and
I love the people that say, I can't wait for it to get back to normal.
Yeah.
That is not going to happen.
No. My children just got their 2nd dose of the vaccine on Saturday, and we did a happy dance. And, in 2 weeks, we'll then be able to go and take them to a restaurant again. And we're super excited. But let's not forget that the under 5 crowd still doesn't have a vaccine. And so, there are people who are saying, okay, well, now that all the kids are vaccinated, like everybody can just come back to the office. And that's not true yet.
Right.
I guess I also want to highlight how unstable childcare has been, not just, the fact that our
school because they shut down too. So, that was the tricky thing.
Yeah. And we're in a massive childcare crisis right now because a lot of childcares were forced to shut down over the course of the pandemic. And so when employers say, oh, just come on back, well, that's not so easy for people who have nowhere to take their children. I have a friend who, her kids are in childcare and they're having such a shortage of childcare workers that they have closed down one of the classes, and for the other class, it is first come, first serve. This is
so you could drive up and they could say, so sorry?
Yes, she has had to turn around and go home and be with her children during on a day when she thought she was going to be able to work because the daycare is full. I mean, never mind the situation around childcares and schools where you have one kid in the class who tests positive for COVID and suddenly then
everybody's home for at least a week.
Yeah. So when people say, oh, when we were in COVID, I have to pause and just take a couple of calming breaths because we're still very much in it. And I don't want those parents to get left behind.
Right.
But what you were pointing to earlier is the fact that we now have an opportunity for things to change and be different than they were even in a new normal. And I think it's really complicated. And if anybody says, oh, we have the answer to how to make hybrid working and whatever work, then they're lying.
Holy cow. If they really have the answer, wowza. But no, they don't.
We're all fumbling through the dark a little bit, trying to find our way. And the solution, oh, let's all just go back and pretend like this never happened is not going to work. Navigating the hybrid nature of it is complicated too, right? Because on the one hand, as a working parent, hooray, liberation. I don't have to do the commute is as well as drop off and pick up, anymore. And what becomes of a demographic where the people who are volunteering to work remotely or hybrid are all caregivers and working parents. And then you end up with the cool kids club back at the office, to whom the opportunity
the hard workers, right?
So there's a perception around that. I know Bridget Schulte just wrote an article where she says that the people who opt to work remotely while everyone else is going back will be quote unquote mommy tracked to the extreme. So, you're out of sight, you're out of mind. How are you going to be included in the opportunities that come up and the chances?
Well, and just this, it's not just the, hey, we see you every day, so we remember. It's the casual comments by the coffee maker, all of those various things.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that there's a huge opportunity here. I think it was on Krista Tippett's podcast around, that we have a window here. We have a fairly narrow window for identifying new ways of being and being creative and stepping into them and trying them out before that window closes and we sort of just revert to our old habits. And I want us to use this window for experimentation and good, and claiming that no one has the answers, but we're all really like willing to dare and try new things in the interim.
Right. Well, and it is going to change. I mean, my husband's company is a great example. They went on a Friday, March, whatever. They were at work. They worked on Monday.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And so, and then several times they have said, hey, you're going to come back in as hybrid at X date in the future. And then, oops, can't do that.
Variant, yes.
Oops. And so he finally got the word that he will be work from home forever. So he went in last week. I know. And that kind of scares you, right? But he went in last week and cleaned out his office. I mean, and so now if he goes in, it will be just on an as needed basis, and he'll use whatever space they have. And so that actually was kind of good, because now he knows. But the hybrid thing is so confusing because, again, you don't know, somebody might test positive, somebody might just have a runny nose. I mean, all these various things. But I talked to somebody who was hybrid and has been for quite a while, because she's in higher education. So they kind of needed to go back in. But she was work from home Tuesday, Thursday, in the office Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And she said at least once a day, no matter where she is, whatever file folder she needs is in the other place, right? And she lives close enough to campus and she has a teenage daughter, where she can call and say, hey, I need, and they can come trotting across. But I mean, how many times does that happen? And I don't, we do have stuff on the cloud. I mean, all those various things, but yeah, hybrid is just going to be a whole weird animal. Not the least of which is, hey, you're taking your laptop home and oops, you broke it. I mean,
Yeah. And I mean, think about new moms who are pumping too. I had a pump at my office and, had all the stuff there, and it's a logistical nightmare to carry all of those tools back and forth all the time.
Well, and it ain't cheap. It's not like you're going to have, a full set, in both places.
Yes. So,
but of course, all of us who've been working from home for years, I mean, that we all have had to figure out the whole, well, you're home, so you can do the laundry, you can do this, you can do that. And of course it's even, a different dynamic when you're home with kids, because, I was interviewing one person on my podcast, and she said, every time she had 2 or 3 at home, and she shuts her door and she says, there is a sign on the door that says, unless you are bleeding, do not knock. And, clearly that works with older kids, but that whole dynamic of, it's like we were saying, at the press conference, the kid is there. And so, and we've, I mean, I'm kind of like, what? That's cute. I mean, it's going to happen.
We've allowed ourselves to be seen as who we are.
The cat wanders through, the dog wanders through. We should go, oh, look, there's the kid. And so, it's just, I think, if anything, hopefully what this is doing is expanding kind of our empathy for, here is, and maybe it comes back to, the whole people who say, I want a work-life balance. There is no such thing. I just scoff at anybody who thinks that. And I think so maybe it's that we just need to know that there's work life, and they're all just very intertwined.
Yeah, I do prefer the term work-life integration, or just life. I mean, why do we put work over here and life over here?
Oh, yeah.
Work is part of life. It's definitely all integrated. And I think we've been living in a world of complete work-life mush, as I've been calling it, where we're not so skilled at setting helpful boundaries. And then we get burnt out because it's all just bleeding into itself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I'm a huge advocate for integrating sort of micro mindfulness strategies and boundaries between work and home, even if they are a deep breath whenever we, put our laptop up, or a transition ritual with our children. Right. Whenever my kids were at daycare early on, we came up with this transition ritual to help them separate from us. And it's called hug, kiss, push. They're allowed one squeezy hug, one squeezy kiss, and then a push out the door. And when we were at daycare, this helped them to physically separate from us. So, you picture the 3-year-old attached to dad or
to your leg. Yeah.
So when they were allowed to push us, which normally they're not allowed to do, so they found it hilarious.
Kind of empowered them.
It empowered them. It physically separated us, and they laughed. Like we laughed while they were laughing. It's like, I got to push mommy.
Yeah.
My children are 8 and 10, and they still do hug, kiss, push. Even if, like I'll say, okay, I'm going up to work now. Hug, kiss, push, mommy, and on the school playground, same thing. And so, to the extent you can identify, I think, transition rituals to build into your day. Before I sit down and start working in the morning, I have a raise the blinds, make the bed, sit down, sort of take a
you breath, make it your office.
And I think we need to establish those pauses and boundaries. Otherwise, we're feeling like we're always on in all the areas of our lives.
Right. Yeah. And of course, that's one of the things that the employers need to do. And it doesn't matter if you're, a parent or not, the whole work from home, just because your computer is there doesn't mean you're going to check emails at 10 o'clock at night. Yeah. And, I had that when I've been working from home for about 20 years, took my, started my business, moved home. That was great. Thought that was fabulous. But my clients all pretty much thought I worked 24/7. And I have, at that point, I had clients across the United States. Now I have clients, all over everywhere. And so, you do have to adapt, obviously, because of time zones and things. But, they literally would expect that I would respond at 10 o'clock at night. So the first boundary I had to have was myself to not be doing that, or at least not respond, because the first time you respond, it's gone. They're going to, but then the other thing, and I could do this because these were my clients. It's a little bit more difficult, with employer employee. I told them, you know what, if there are things that happen, if you need evening, nights, weekends, holidays, if you need me to be doing something, then that's great. It costs you double. And it was amazing how they, it can wait till tomorrow morning. But those boundaries are going to be so important for anybody who's working from home to say, okay, these are my hours that I will check. And, I still tell my clients, okay, text me if it is something that needs done outside of office hours, because that will catch my attention. And then obviously it depends on what it is, but they do know, okay, it really is pretty much an emergency situation for them to contact, or they might be saying, hey, I'm going to send you something in the morning. They're kind of doing it as the reminder, but yeah, the whole boundary thing with working from home is going to be absolutely critical for people.
Yeah. And I think a lot of working parents do work what we refer to as the split shift, where we work until a certain hour and then we have to go pick up our kids and do like dinner and bath and bed, and we take a couple of hours out, and then a lot of us come back online afterward. And what I've learned to do, that I'm good with some folks and not with others, but during that split shift, when I go back up to work after my kids are in bed, and I'm back online for a while, is that I schedule the email to go out at 8 a.m. the following morning. And so, at least people are not feeling on the hook to respond to me at 10:30, even if I'm
because it's reciprocal, right?
Exactly. Right. And I have worked very hard on creating a hard stop for myself at 10:30 p.m. Where, my husband and I then sit on the couch and we do a meditation together, and we sort of get ready for the next day. Because when I was blowing through that nighttime time and just not paying attention to when I was shutting down, then I was cranky and grumpy and not helpful to anyone. So,
because you would get to working on a project, doing research, whatever, and all of a sudden it'd be midnight, and you're thinking, I've only got just a little bit more to go, right?
And a little bit more is never just a little bit more. Yeah, exactly. So I found that for myself, having an accountability partner, someone who knows that I'm like declaring that I'm shutting down, and having an enjoyable next activity, so I'm not shutting down just to doom scroll or something, has been a really helpful way of setting that nighttime boundary. So my husband and I do a meditation, and then I come up and I read a couple of pages of a book, and that's something I look forward to. Oh, if I don't stop now, I'm not going to get to read the couple of pages of that book that I'm engaged in.
I love it. And you talk in your book a lot about setting schedules, setting all of those things. I love the chapter where you talked about the firsts. And, and I thought that was so cute again, from the non-parental view. But I always remember when people said, spoke for the first time, walked for the first time, all of those various things. And, and all of this is going to go together with that big G word, the whole guilt thing. But, so you've got your child off at daycare with grandma, wherever, and they have their first whatever, and you're just feeling horribly guilty about it. And I love the fact that in your book, you point out it doesn't have to be the first. It's the first when you see it, and I love when you say, maybe daycare and wherever shouldn't be telling you, oh, they called me mommy, or took their first steps or whatever. Just, had a good day.
Yeah. And some daycares do have a policy of not telling you. Yeah. We had our first, he learned how to clap, at our dining room table. And we went into daycare the next morning and said, he learned how to clap. And they said, we know.
Yes. Been doing it for 3 weeks, but
it didn't diminish our joy when we saw it for the first time. Mm-hmm. And they could do something for the first time. They could learn how to stand up in their crib at night with no one watching, or, while you're in the bathroom. It's not here's what I want to say. Mm-hmm. It's not because you went to work.
Right.
That you missed the first time somebody did.
Yeah, you could have just missed it because you were in the other room. Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly. So everybody says, oh, I'm a horrible mom because I missed it because I was working. No, enough with that narrative. Right. Go celebrate the fact that you're seeing this beautiful new thing. Now take the video and send it to your loved ones and celebrate. Don't blame yourself for working.
Yeah. But it does come back to a lot of guilt. And you have guilt for leaving the child to go to daycare. You have guilt for not doing your work, for not supporting, your coworkers, your company, whatever it is. And it becomes this whole huge vicious circle. So talk to us a bit about how that can be managed.
Yeah. Perhaps ironically, I find that the best strategy for working parents to use first when they're feeling that guilt and the spiral of guilt is to recognize that they're in it and just say, okay, like, welcome guilt. I see
it is what it is. Mm-hmm.
I see you here. I see that I am feeling guilty, and that's okay. And just tell yourself, like, that's okay. And I'm going to sit with it and watch it pass, because it's not going to stick with you.
Right.
The other mantra that I use a couple of mantras on a daily basis, but one of them is you are enough. It's something that I repeat to myself probably ad nauseum. Like, you're doing enough right now. If you're giving 90% at work and 90% at home, that's already 180% of a human.
Somehow that didn't add up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm a huge proponent of repeating to yourself the Teddy Roosevelt quote, comparison is the thief of joy. Mm-hmm. Because when you can center on your own values and center on what's important and the fact that you are doing what you need to do for the priorities that are in your life and tune out the noise of what he's doing over here and what she's doing over there, then I think you can calm down a lot of that internal anxiety.
Right.
And find other working parents. They're going to normalize the situation for you and say, hey, you are doing an amazing job. And maybe you can't get everything done all in one day, but no human being is meant to. And that's okay.
That's why we have to-do lists.
Yeah. I'm going to have a to-do list when I'm 90. Like, I mean, it's not all going to get done on one day. Right. So I think we do feel guilty, but just include it among all the other emotions that you have. It is just one of the many emotions that we feel. And when we normalize that and can articulate it, I think it moves through us in a way that doesn't allow it to get us stuck.
Right. And then there are the ones where, you feel guilty because they're in daycare now. Oh my gosh, I'm back to having some time to myself. And you're like, oh my God, I'm a horrible parent. But yeah, I mean, the whole guilt wagon, and it's
the horrible parent thing. Yeah. I read Glennon Doyle's book Untamed, and now I have her journal, and I've just started digging into it. But one of the first couple of prompts are a good parent, a good mother is, a good daughter is, and sort of writing out where you got those stories, what stories you have in your head about what a good daughter is, what a good friend is, what a good spouse is, and thinking about where those stories come from. And you might be amazed to find that you have stories in your head that are conflicting with each
Right.
other that
Mhm.
you got from some ancient time that doesn't even relate to your current life. But I found that like writing those out can be super helpful to articulating like, oh, that's why I'm feeling weird about this, because there's some story playing in my head
Right.
that I'm not a good parent. What I like to focus on, especially with the guilt, is I am modeling for my sons
Mhm.
what it is like to be a professional woman
Mhm.
who's a mother who
Mhm.
takes care of herself and values that.
Mhm.
And I want them to grow up believing that, you know, if they have a partner who's a woman,
Mhm.
that she is able to do all of those things and
Yes.
does not have to be the martyr for her
Mhm.
family either.
Right.
So I also view it as a modeling for the
Mhm.
next generation.
Well, and showing them what they can do to make sure that that happens. And you know, it's with, you know, whoever their partner is, you know,
Yes.
how they can be supportive.
Exactly.
So what are some more things we've got just a little over 10 minutes left. What are some more things that an employer can do to really help these parents, you know, and again, whether it's just, you know, baby is 6 weeks old or baby is 16 years old, you know, what can employers really be doing to help them?
Yeah, I love that question. I have like 50 million things, but I'll start off with some of the simple ones, which are, I think, first of all, someone in a leadership position within the company to say, caregivers are valued in our company, and we want you to come back after you take your leave, and we know that you contribute valuably to us. I think hearing that from someone in leadership matters more than almost anything.
Right.
You know, there are companies that provide mentorship opportunities so that a parent within the company is paired with an expectant parent within the company so that they can sort of help, you know, guide them through the parental leave and return process. You know, a small token of celebration for the arrival of the child can be really nice. The company onesie with the logo on it, or
a little t-shirt, little onesie.
You know, there are companies that provide a copy of my book, Back to Work After Baby, with a company onesie, you know, and
I love that.
The firm that I worked for had sort of gifts that were staggered. So every couple of months they were sending something. When the baby got to be around 6 months, they sent a little bowl and spoon, you know, because the baby's starting to learn how to eat. So I think those gestures can be really, really kind. I think if you're an employer that has any sort of affinity groups, consider including a caregiver and or parent related affinity group among those. I have gotten both really amazing support from and even business development opportunities from joining a group within my employer of other working parents and caregivers. I'm a serial founder of these working parent groups, both at the employer where I was when I had my kids and at the law firm. And now I've become a convener of a group called the Working Parent Group Network, or WPGN, and we have over 200 leaders of working parent groups at organizations who all come together to sort of help each other not recreate the wheel. So happy to get you tapped into that. I mean, benefits are huge, right? A parental leave benefit that is degendered and doesn't say primary and secondary caregiver, but just says, you know, parent. Is a really big deal, and paid leave is super helpful. I think manager training is another really helpful tool for people. Managers often feel like, okay, gosh, I don't know what to do. Like I'm being left out on a limb here, and my employees,
I don't want my other employees to feel bad. What do I do?
What do I do? How do I navigate this conversation? How do I manage the person who's going on leave and the workload and everything? And to the extent as an employer, you can provide some tools to the manager, a template parental leave guide that they can use to have a conversation with their employee who's going out on leave, some guidelines for what they should be thinking about, other people they can be paired with as mentors who maybe their employee already went out on parental leave and they can talk. So a mindful return, we have a manager training module as well. So, you know, that emotional support, some tools to help with the transition. I mean, the Mindful Return course is a 4-week program that is specifically designed to help new parents with that transition. And as I mentioned, 84 employers offer it as a benefit. And so there are strategies to actually help your employee feel more confident, have a smoother transition, and want to come back at the end of the leave.
You know, and then when they expand that to everyone, you know, and so, you know, they're saying, okay, now you're a caregiver, you know, or, hey, you just want a 6-month sabbatical. I mean, all of those things, the companies that are truly becoming empathetic are the ones that are going to be successful. And yeah, there are always times where you have to have rules. I mean, there's just, but to be able to combine that with empathy, I think is what's important.
Absolutely. Because we're all human. We all have needs outside of the job. Yes.
Right. And of course, one of the things that we always want to, make sure we mention is the fact that there are times, we've been talking about guilt and all of those things. There are obviously some people who have very severe issues, the postpartum depression type of things. And, so, we want to encourage, anybody to make sure that they're taking care of that. And a lot of times, I've seen this and I've heard people talk about this. Somebody else sees it, and so like I might, you and I might be on a Zoom every other day, and I notice a change in you. And I mean, we've been talking about this just in general with, people working at home and getting depressed and things like that. And so I think it's important for employers, for coworkers, all of those, to feel like they can say, hey, we're concerned, and obviously where medical help is needed, it needs to be, you need to be able to get it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And to have the manager who says to the employee, like, it must be really challenging right now to have your kid at home and be trying to work. Can go a long way to, I think, building that bridge that allows for more of that trust and communication to happen. Yeah.
And again, kind of laughing when, the kid comes through and things like that. I did a podcast interview and it was so funny that it was a guy and he was at his kitchen table, which I thought, wow, we've been doing this for 20 months and he's still at his kitchen table. Okay, whatever. I mean, for all I knew, it was this tiny little apartment. In the middle of it, the kid comes in. And I mean, this is a teenager, makes his lunch and goes back out. I mean, and we just kept right on going. But I also laugh when somebody's dog comes wandering through. But again, that's, it's that whole empathy thing to know that, not everybody can shut themselves off in their private office, and all of these. And to me, it makes it more fun to kind of know, oh my gosh, look, they've got a cat. They've got, these two little redhead boys. I mean, all of those various things.
Exactly.
So we've got about 5 minutes left. And so what strategies should new parents have to help them become more calm and successful? COVID, not COVID, we don't care about any of that. Just what can they do?
Yeah, it's a great question. So when I was returning to work after parental leave, I didn't really have a structured way of thinking through it. And so it was a bit of a muddle for me. But in the interim, I've created this program that has 4 different prongs and 4 different themes. And I would say that if you can ground yourself in these 4 themes and give yourself sort of a framework for returning, you'll feel like you have something to hang your hat on. You'll feel like you have something more concrete.
You have a little control, right? Isn't it kind of one of the big things we all think, oh my God, I have no control over anything.
Over anything in new parent life. Yeah. So the 4 categories are a mindful mindset for going back to work, logistics, leadership, and community. And I'll just maybe give one tip in each of those 4 categories.
Perfect.
Our course dives into, so many more. In terms of a mindful mindset, I think don't undervalue the little pauses. For me, we were talking about multitasking. I multitask my shower, and that every morning I get into the shower and I use this acronym ISS. I think I talked about this in the book, where I stands for set an intention. The first S stands for stretch, and the next S stands for savor. This is like 5 minutes when I am not attached to a child, right? I'm alone in a shower with nobody else, which is remarkable. And so I set an intention for my day. The intention might be go to bed at 9:30 p.m. because you are freaking exhausted. Or the intention might be repeat the mantra, I am enough, as many times as you can today. Then stretch, a couple of yoga poses in the shower, feels good. And then savor, that's the gratitude practice. That's the remember that I have hot water. And although there might be Cheerios on the floor, there are also Cheerios.
You have food.
People, I have food. We're not on the toilet paper hunt right now anymore with COVID. Like take that moment to really soak in the good things. So, don't undervalue the importance of taking those small pauses as a new parent. On the logistical side, in terms of going back to work after having a baby, I'm a big advocate for phasing into childcare, phasing into work if that is possible.
Not just Monday, it changes, right?
Yeah. So first of all, you can go back to work for your first day on a Thursday or Friday. It doesn't have to be a Monday, but you can also, negotiate with your employer and say, okay, for the first day, can I come back for these hours and then grow over time? Same thing with childcare. You don't have to have them in childcare the full day, the first day. In terms of leadership, we talked about this earlier, but remember that you're gaining amazing skills through parenthood that you may not see immediately if you're still in the fog of new baby land, but start writing them down. Start a list of the skills that you think you're gaining by being a parent and put that somewhere where you can see it. And then the fourth thing is building and staying in community. I isolated myself and cried on the kitchen floor way too many times to count, and it was not pretty. And I felt like I had to do it alone. And I just want all new parents to know that you do not have to do this thing alone. There are lots of parents out there who work and love their babies and are amazing parents and amazing professionals, and we've got your back. And so, by doing something like joining a cohort of Mindful Return, you are in a program with other people who are all returning around the same time you are. Go to the baby and parent groups, and don't sit alone and think that you have to do it all by yourself. So that's sort of the four categories that we try to work in to help people feel like they have some agency over their return.
I love it. And we didn't talk about the fact that, this really does apply to everyone.
Yes.
We my generation are now being grandparents. And so it might be that for Christmas, I buy your book. For, like I said, I don't have grandkids, but nieces, nephews, and we all know people who are going through this, right? Whether it's, your children or, your friends, whoever, there are ways that we can help. And I think that's the big thing to remember is, just because I'm not going through it doesn't mean that I can't help someone else. And so that was a big part of why I wanted to talk about this on the program today is this is universal.
Yeah. Yeah. And as parents, we'll take all the help and support and love and nurturance that we can get. And if grandma and grandpa want to come over and volunteer for a few hours to take the children, that's always, welcome.
Yeah, just watch it on the advice.
Yes. Unsolicited advice probably leave by the wayside, but
yes. Well, I saw my kids did. No.
No, your physical presence, love, care, nurturing, and babysitting. Always welcome.
Yep. And remember, they are the parents. If they have rules, you need to follow those. Grandma can spoil to some degree, but yeah. Oh my gosh, Lloyd, this has been absolutely wonderful. I mentioned your book. For those who are watching on the video, let's see the book again. It's called Back to Work After Baby: How to Plan and Navigate a Mindful Return from Maternity Leave. And we're going to put paternity in there too, because it is for both. But tell us a little bit how people contact you and find you and what the services are that you provide.
Great. Thank you, Deb. You can find Mindful Return at mindfulreturn.com. And we have a new cohort of programs for brand new moms transitioning back to work and brand new dads. We have a dad cohort as well. That starts on January 10th, and it runs every other month throughout the year. We've been running these for years. I'm delighted to say that we have expanded internationally. We have.
Well, I know we didn't even get to talk about that.
We have a chapter for moms in the UK who are returning to work after parental leave.
I love how you just said mum.
Oh, yes, I learned. It's not mom.
They're mums. They're not moms. They're mums.
We have India-based chapters for new moms and dads in India who are going back to work after leave. And in January, we are also launching the Spanish language version of our mom and dad global courses. We also are launching Mindful Return 201, which is a 4-week-long program for working parents who are feeling overwhelmed, even though they're back after, they've been back after leave for a year or 10 years, and they're still feeling the stress of working parenthood. So we have a course that is 4 lessons, 4 videos, and 4 coaching calls that starts up on January 10th. I co-host a podcast, Parents at Work, that you can find on all the places that you find podcasts. And I'm on all the usual social media channels. So feel free to link in with me, Lori Mihalich Levin, connect to our Mindful Return business page on LinkedIn, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, all the usual stuff at Mindful Return.
Perfect. I love it. I love it. And this really has been great. And, like I said, there were things we didn't get to talk about. So that just means we have to have you on again. And maybe, we do it, when things have gotten a little more normal. I tell people it's a new normal, right? It's not normal. There's no, and so, to be talking about, okay, now here's the new issues that people are facing. We really didn't talk about, the baby boom after, all these people, were home. But yeah, so we will definitely have you on again. And I look forward to that. But until then, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
If you're a new parent going through this, you got this. You have a whole world of people who've got your back, who are ready to support you. You don't have to do this alone. And if you're not a new parent, look around for a new parent and maybe just ask the question, what can I do to support you? Because we could all use a little extra help in these crazy pandemic parenthood times.
I love it. I love it. Well, I am Deb Creer. I've been having an absolutely fascinating discussion with Lori Mihalich Levin. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Thank you, Deb.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.